Help capture the history of our markets by contributing to the John Lothian News GoFundMe campaign to support the Markets Wiki Education history-focused video series and more.
Advantage Futures is proud to sponsor JLN Video Series.
Many include a recurring theme of people helping others during critical times in their trading careers.
Too often today, when traders need help the most, their call is met with numbers to press on the phone instead of an actual person.
Advantage prioritizes you.
Personalized service, competitive pricing, aimed at giving you every advantage.
Make us your advantage.
Advantage Futures.
Traded cash market ag straight out of school, was a commodities merchandiser, specifically a feed ingredient merchandiser for the Pillsbury Company. I was in Buffalo, New York, and I found it interesting enough that I thought, I want to trade, but I wanted to trade in the larger market. So I started looking, sending resumes, calling around anything that I could to try and get my toe in the door. Tried in Chicago, tried in New York, was ultimately introduced to Steve Fossett, and he agreed to back me. So I moved to Chicago to trade on the floor of the CBOE as a nominee of Steve Fossett. That was the beginning. I went to school in the Midwest to Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, and majored in history. I did not go to grad school. I went straight from Carleton to trading cash market ags, and from cash market ags to the floor of the CBOE. I did buy a seat. Initially, I was on a leased seat with Steve, and as I got up and running and had a success here or there, I purchased a seat. I went back and forth between yellow badges and CBOE seats. The first time I bought one, I had financing from Harris Bank that at the time, I don't know if such things still exist, but at the time they had a whole business built around financing seats to the exchanges in Chicago. I'd love to tell you it was because I had this spectacular track record of trading cash market ags, and he analyzed my positions. And it's my belief to this day that Steve actually focused on something that I had done completely unrelated to trading. While in college, I had done in France as a student overseas. And while there, I had bicycle raced. I wasn't any threat to the bicycle racing community. I'm not making any great athletic claim, but Steve, who had swum the English Channel, taken a shot at the Iditarods, had tackled Everest, his ever further pushing the envelope, ultimately circumnavigating the globe. He focused in on things like that. And to this day, it's my belief that that's what got me in, not the trading track record in cash market ags for Pillsbury. Far and away, the most notable is Ed Tilley. Ed and I were contemporaries on the floor and worked together. Both nominees of Steve, and heaven knows he's gone on to achieve great things. Other folks that were all contemporaries at the same time, Lynn Howard. Lynn's done a lot with the CBOE over the years. Jim Theron, Terry Ashbacher. We were all Steve nominees. I don't want to do anyone a disservice by leaving people out. It was a nice group of people. I break it into two pieces. When I moved to Chicago to trade on the floor, I was a young single guy. My parents viewed it as their son going off on an adventure, so there really wasn't any impact. When Maria and I got married, and then when we had the boys, you start to thinking about things maybe a little bit more, or maybe a lot bit more. It wasn't something where I was compromising my family's life. The camaraderie, some of the excitements, and honestly, there are times where floors are anything but exciting. It's, you can have stretches where there's not a lot of activity, where there's not a lot of volume, but favorites, close-knit circle, some of the hijinks, it's like, at least in those years, there was a stretch where during calm moments, it could be more like not leaving school, the sense of humor. Well, getting clocked a few times when that's not a good time to have a position go against you very, very badly, and realize, yeah, this is your business and you're taking it on the chin. But living the fight another day is also a wondrous thing. So I would do it again in a heartbeat, given the same context and the same circumstances. That context and those circumstances are largely gone. Cross between a gym, a club meeting, and a three-dimensional, 4 or 5-dimensional puzzle. You're particularly in options where, with all these interrelated pieces, you're constantly trying to solve for a puzzle. You're in a somewhat irreverent and sometimes very irreverent environment with a lot of wry humor, watching the tape, watching for news, and you're both a competitor against and a colleague with the other people in your pit. It's a really unique environment. The interrelationship with the brokers dependency on the market makers dependencies on the brokers. It just makes me smile thinking about it. There are highs and lows volatility with market volatility, how people are doing, emotions, the tone. One person's stressed out, someone else is having a great time. But it's all together in one big melting pot. It's to this day the foundation for my professional existence. When you talk about economics on the floor, let's not kid anyone, people were drawn to this idea of limitless opportunity. There wasn't some kind of artificial cap on what constituted success. There's absolutely an offsetting risk to it. But the people that ran businesses and were there year in and year out and had careers on the floor ran very sound, thoughtful businesses that were built around risk assumption and risk transferal. Absolutely. Again, I had the good fortune at that point to be a nominee of Steve Fossett. In terms of when I was a sole prop after I finished my time with Steve, no, I never blew out. Knock on wood. That was good. A lot of my trading style was dictated by the order flow that came in. I didn't, or at least I tried not to have strong opinions. I didn't think I'm going to get wildly long this stock and short that stock. It didn't work for me. I traded off of theoreticals, and I tried to sell the things that were overvalued from my vantage point and buy the things that were undervalued within the confines of what order flow there was to trade against. So by and large, I tried to stay relatively balanced. I didn't like to get short vol out on the tails, the kind of thing that could blow up in your face. There were stretches where I was, particularly as you started seeing electronics creep in, I was comfortable looking for disconnects, pricing discrepancies that were more a reflection of some participants having access to related markets and those of us on the floor not. So there were stretches where I would happily trade, for example, with Timber Hill, or stretches where I would, because they were running a much bigger business, and there was the long stretch where they wouldn't actually trade in the stock. Keep a balanced book and try not to do anything crazy. the crash was surreal. And it was very early in my career. I was coming up on a year and a half, not yet 2 years. So I was a young guy, and there was no playbook for what unfolded. I was actually slightly short volatility, and I had this sense of being exposed on the downside, but I had the enormous good fortune to be long stock that day in the main stock in my pit, which was Merck, the big pharmaceutical, and I just sold it. Make markets, respond to flow. Volatility blew up. There was almost, if a broker was coming into the pit to to buy something, you had to have some semblance of a rationale for where you priced it, but you just didn't want to let go of units that you weren't selling out of the money puts and not worrying about it. There was almost no volatility number you could put on it that was going to be high enough to offset the risk. Coming in on Terrible Tuesday, which was a issue in and of itself, I actually had oversold on the way, marched into the pit the next day, actually a lot shorter than I was comfortable with. And there's just good old fashioned dumb luck. It took a long time to get things open, waiting for the open on the floor of the NYSE, and then all of us in the pit on the floor of the CBOE going through opening rotation, putting prices up. So I was actually able to cover my short on the opening in Merck and just flatten out. A dodged 2 bullets on the Monday and then on the Tuesday. Some prudence and just staying ahead of it on the way down the first day, and good old fashioned dumb luck the next day. In some ways, it was almost like the hint of what was coming in terms of electronics. When I first showed up on the floor, and you'd have 1 or 2 people that were the dominant market makers at the time in the pit that I showed up in, and I lived almost my entire CBOE life in the same pit. I didn't move around, and the big stocks were Archer and Nabisco, Merck, the pharmaceutical, Fluor Daniel, the big contractor, TAR, the Argentine telephone company. Mark Esposito was the dominant force in opening rotation, and as I got my feet under me, Mark and I both would run through opening rotation, and we'd bark out bids and offers for every put and call on the screen as the underlying stock opens. Then the quote reporter would go in a frenzy, putting the prices up, and we keep everything up to date. So the rotation was orderly, a lot of work, kind of exciting, kind of fun. Now fast forward a few years, and you started having early auto quoting where we could put basic parameters in, and auto quoting was at the time in its earliest form, at least on the CBOE, was almost a communal facility. You had rudimentary parameters that you could put in, and when the stock opened, let's say we'd have all the deep in the monies, and you'd light up auto quote and boom, we didn't have to say a thing. Now those are all live. But the quotes weren't attributable to any one person. It wasn't, I'm putting in my quotes and Mark's putting in his quotes. They were to be argued over, and people would have an axe to grind. They'd want it skewed one way or another, but ultimately the pit had to live with the auto quote values, and they were driven by tick by the underlying stock. Openings became more automated. You started seeing more in the way of automated execution, just to deal with order flow, to reduce broker workload. You had RAISE, the retail automated execution system for, I think it was initially 10 lots or below, that was assigned on a wheel, and you just the OBO, the order book official, would just hand you a ticket. You just sold 10 of these. Congratulations. And you look back, and it's almost like Jurassic Park. It's really simple electronic execution, really simple electronic market making. But that was the beginning of it, and that was really the precursor to what came in the ensuing years. Yeah, the short answer is yes. And there were some adjustments in closing procedures. There was a period where the underlying, you sell something going into the close, or you take on new exposure, and you can't get the stock hedge off, or you can't find other options to offset the position with. So you end up, long, whether it's deltas or volatility, you end up with something that you don't want. I can't actually cite a specific example. I don't remember something where I went home going, crap, I don't want to live with that. But you never went home perfectly flat. You could end up with positions that went out over 3 years. The longest expiration in terms of stuff that I was trading went out 3 years. So you can have all different flavors of exposure and not necessarily like it.
Advantage Futures is proud to sponsor this JLN video series. In many of the series videos, there are recurring themes of people being helped at critical times in their trading careers. Too often today, when traders need help the most, their call is met with numbers to press on the phone instead of an actual person. At Advantage, you are our priority. Everyone needs an edge or advantage when trading. Make us your advantage.
John Lothian News would like to thank those individuals who have contributed to our Markets Wiki Education GoFundMe campaign. Their financial assistance allows us to produce and distribute videos like this for our Open Outcry Traders History Project or the Path to Electronic Trading video series. Join them in supporting John Lothian News, capturing the history of our industry.